Hello everyone, welcome to Guardian Diaries. This is our 4th video. Thank you for the response and all the follows on Twitter. We've gotten 190 in one day. Thank you very much. I'm glad y'all are enjoying and hoping y'all are learning something you didn't know from the Guardian Diaries. For those of you who are not following the Guardian Diaries 1, 2, 3, and 4, if you want to know what we've been talking about, you can find them in order on YouTube. So those of you who don't know me, like I said, I'm Raven Phoenix. Some call me a clairvoyant, a psychic, or a medium. I don't like any of those words. I'm just simply a messenger. I have abilities that most people do not. I see past events in people's lives. I go to crime scenes and see who's done the crimes. I get messages from guardians, angels if you want to call them that. And my diaries are about the wisdom and answering questions that people are sending in for Julia, my guardian. I've been asked questions about myself, such as, how was I when I communicated with my first spirit? I was 6 years old. And I've been asked, why do I teach people how to combat the darkness forces of this world? And why am I trying to teach people about the good and the bad, the white spirits, the black spirits, and the gray spirits, and the forces in this world? And mind you, again, for the new people who don't know, we are not talking about race or skin color. We are talking about the spirit within the human body, in different planes they come from, and why bad things happen to good people. That was in number 2. Getting back to the question of why am I so schooled in the effects dark spirits have on good spirits, the white spirits. I have first-hand knowledge. It affected my life for many years. I believe if you've never experienced something, and then you can't tell somebody how to handle a situation if you've never been there. I myself am born of a black spirit. My mother was very evil in many forms. She wasn't just a mean person. She was an evil person. She was the kind of person that if she knew you, she would destroy you, your livelihood, your home, your relationship, whatever she could, and she enjoyed doing it. She would befriend people and get their trust, find out the dirt on them, and then use it against them once she could not use them anymore. This is a black spirit. This is a dark, evil entity that inhabited a human body. And I'll explain that later. Excuse me. Like I said, I was 6 years old when my mom realized I was gifted. My mother was also gifted, but she was evil. My grandmother appeared to me and told me she was my grandmother. I never knew her. She died when I was 6 months old. My mom never talked about her, never had no pictures of her. She told me to go tell my mom my middle sister was sick and she had something wrong with her head, to go tell my mom. So I ran into my mom and I told her, I said, she's sick. Mom says, how do you know? Grandma told me. Mom stepped back and looked at me. She says, what do you mean your grandma told you? I said, Grandma, she's in the bedroom. She told me she's sick. She's got to go to the doctor. Mom wanted to know what this person looked like I was talking to. And I told her what her mother looked like. Mom's and my relationship changed completely, because this is when she realized that I was gifted. And she did not want me to realize exactly what I was. So my life turned into a series of mental abuse, physical abuse, brainwashing. 3 days later, after I told my mom about my sister, the school was calling. My sister had fallen ill at school, and she spent some time in the children's hospital. When my sister got home, she beat the crap out of me. And she tells me to this day, "Don't you ever tell me anything you see about me." And she hates me for the simple fact. As I grew older, my life got more difficult. My mom did everything she could to abuse me and my sisters. My sisters ran away when they were 15, 16 years old, and we never saw them again until I was an adult. For the simple fact, Mom literally crushed their spirit. And they're still that way to this day, unfortunately. So, anyway, about when I was 15, 16, I was dating a Marine, and he knew of the abuse I was enduring. He was going to Camp Lejeune. He was getting out, and he was taking me up north. So, Mom found this out. She had him put in the brig. She had him put out of the military. And then when he got home, let me back up. She had him put out of the military, and she made me write him a letter saying, "I never want to see you again." In which I didn't think he believed it. But mine and his last date, I told him I was never going to see him alive again. And he told me, "Oh, I'll be back in 90 days. He came back to my hometown. 12 hours later, he was dead. I never seen him alive again. And then when he was supposed to have been with me, that evening, I was woken by a bright light in my room, my bed shaking, and it was him. And I asked him, "How'd you get past Mom?" He says, "I'm dead." And then he told me what had happened. First, he remembered. And he had told me not to trust my mom, which I already knew this, that she would one day try to kill me too. So then I remember the phone ringing, and it was his mom telling my mom he was dead. She come in my room, and I looked at her. She says, "What's wrong?" I said, "He's dead." And she goes, "Oh, good, so now I don't have to tell you." So for many years, Mom's gotten away with her evil deeds. A few years later, I met my first husband, and when I was pregnant with our first child, my mom came to me one day and told me, "If you don't make him leave, he will suffer the same fate." So after my son was born, I pushed my husband away for fear that he would die too. I'm not realizing or understanding at this time she was wanting my child. I was so brainwashed and so beaten from her. I would pretty much do what she told me to do. So when my son was born, it was just me, her, and my son. And as my son grew older, my son started exhibiting talents such as mine. And then her anger grew toward my son. As I watched the same thing she did to me, now she was doing it to my child. I would come home from work and find marks on him, and I knew I had to do something. I had to protect my child. So I went to law enforcement. They were no help. I went to child services. They were no help. I went to the courts. I put restraining orders on her. They were no help. This is why I believe that evil is truly protected here on this level, because evil reigns so loosely and there's hardly no punishment for it. After a few years of trying to keep her away from my son, 12 injunctions, moving town to town, she would always find us. And I realized she always found us because we had a link. She knew where I was, and she would find me. Then she would be good for a little while, and then she'd get nuts again. So that's what I was talking about, of the dark spirits. They tell you what you want to hear and get your trust, and then zap you again. So I stayed, got tired of trying to get the courts to help me, tired of trying to get the police to help me. So I pretty much just gave up. Until one day, I didn't let her see my son for a long time. And then I was told her medications were fine, she was fine, everything was fine. I left my child with her, and I came back. He had 2 black eyes. And she always told me while I was growing up, you don't deserve to be loved. And if anyone loves you, I'll take them away from you. She was starting to tell my son the same things. I knew I had to go past my fear to protect my child. So the day I walked out of there, I didn't know I was never going to see her again for 15 years. I took my child, no money, just a car, just clothes on our back, and left. In the meantime, while I was preparing to leave, I get a phone call. My mother has tried to have me killed. My mother went to a drug dealer, told him I was a narc, told him I was telling on him. He put the word out he was going to kill me. When that didn't work, my mother and my friend from high school and his aunt, my friend from high school, we won't say any names, but if he's watching this, you'll know exactly who it is. Everybody will. Him, me, my mom, and his aunt were all friends. She had a bar downtown. She called his wife and told the wife that he was cheating on her. So the wife come down to the bar where we all were. He pulls up with another woman on his Harley. So therefore, his aunt must have told him I did it. And I didn't. So he went to his friends and tried to have me killed, trying to get even with me. But at the same time, he knew my mom wanted my son, so he was going to help her out too. But that kind of backfired because, for the simple fact, his friends were my friends years before. And those certain friends knew when I was younger I worked with the police department, knew I was going to be a police officer. They knew I was gifted, and they knew I helped people. So that backfired in his face, and nobody would do anything to harm me. So then they went to a what they call an independent biker, which is a biker that has no allegiance to any club, for those of you that don't know who it is. They don't know what they told him, but he put a hit on me. And he had a massive heart attack and died about a month afterwards. And then I find out that another person she went to try to have me killed, they also had a heart attack and died. In the midst of me going through all this trauma, all this chaos, I was sitting in a park with my son, not knowing what to do or where to go. That's when I heard my guardian for the first time. And I looked around to see if anybody was out around me because I could hear so clearly. And then I realized what it was. She talked to me for 3 hours, telling me what was going to happen. And she had told me that she was sending me help. When this help comes, accept it. Well, at the time, I was dating a guy for 3 or 4 days. Didn't really know him. He found out what I was going through. I was standing in my mom's house on the phone with this person, and he told me, get in the car and come to my house. So I did. I had no idea I would never see my mother for 15 years. He took me to another state a couple days later, got me and my son an apartment. We stayed there for many years until one day my father calls, leaving a message on my answer machine. She's found you. Get out of the house. She's found you. I always kept bags packed in my closet for me and my son for this day. And I looked at my son, and my son looked at me. He says, here we go again. I said, nope, not this time. I called the police. They listened to the answer machine. I gave them all the court documents I had. Next thing I know, they called 8 more cops to my house. And they told me they were taking me and my son to a safe house to protect me from her. So they grabbed me and my son and put us somewhere. I wasn't even allowed to know where we were. I didn't. In a house with a whole bunch of other women and children. And the house was heavily guarded by police officers 24 hours a day. We weren't allowed to have no cell phones, no contact with the outside world for our protection, everybody in the home. And for the first time in my life, I felt safe. And that's when I knew there was people out there that would help me. So then, thank God, nothing happened. They let us out. I went home. And then I started noticing everything my guardian told me was happening. So everything I've been through, I decided, well, I'm going to help myself. I went to a doctor. He realized everything I'd been through. And he looked at me and told me, he says, I'm not sure if I can help you. He says, you were more a prisoner than you were a daughter. He says, she was your captor, not your mother. And I don't know if I can help you. So I wasn't going to take that as the final word. I got myself a whole bunch of self-help books. I read, I studied, I helped myself, I rebuilt my life. and I have a shaman priest friend who has passed away now. This is why I am called Raven Phoenix. Because of my gifts, Raven is a messenger of God. Phoenix is because I've built my life from nothing so many times. Every time it burnt down, I rose from those ashes. This is how and why I know the devastating effects of dark spirits trying to take the light in the lives of the good. I hope this was enough information of how I know so well on how to relearn the brainwashing people put on you. I've walked so many different paths and lived so many different lives in one life because I had to. And I hope my videos really are helping people who are under the same attacks from the dark forces of this world and the people that are dark around them. So I hope this gives a little bit of light on the question y'all have been asking. Sometimes a college degree and a doctorate doesn't mean anything. I think the best teacher is life. You have to have lived something in order to know how to help somebody through the same thing. I don't believe psychologists and doctors can really do much unless they've been there. I don't believe that a psychologist can help a rape victim unless that psychologist has been raped. I don't believe a therapist can help an abused wife unless that therapist was an abused wife. I think people that have lived through the traumas, the abuses, the rapes, are more qualified to help other victims that has happened to because they've been there. They know how they're feeling. That's just my opinion. And I'm going to conclude this video. Thank you for watching and have a good night.